Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Zone 1 Town Hall meeting. We are ready to answer your questions and share information you might need to know about crime data, our work in your community, and our plan to tackle issues in Zone 1. We have a list of questions that some have already submitted, and time permitting, we will take a few more questions once these are answered. We will start by introducing your Zone 1 Commander, Major Kelly Collier. Next, we will introduce members of the department's executive command staff. Chief Rodney Bryant, Assistant Chief Todd Coit, Field Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Timothy Peak, Community Services Division Commander, Deputy Chief Celeste Murphy, who will be represented today by Major Reginald Mormon, Criminal Investigations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Charles Hampton, who will be represented today by Major DeAndrea Price, Strategies and Special Projects Division Commander, Deputy Chief Darren Shearbon, Support Services Division Commander, Deputy Chief Stacy Gibbs, Contingency Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Michael O'Connor, Director of Public Affairs, Shada Spikes, Office of Professional Standards, Major Bates. We want to thank those of you who submitted questions. All of the questions will be read and answered here tonight unless the issue is a duplicate question or is related to an ongoing investigation. Anything that cannot be answered this evening will be noted and one of the commanders will follow up with you with a response. If you have something to ask or say during the event, please raise your hand or send the comment to the chat box and we will get to you if time permits. Our goal is to have a helpful and meaningful conversation that provides pertinent information and hopefully responds adequately to your concerns. SPO Tashina Brown with our Public Affairs Unit will begin reading the first question.
Questions for Chief Bryant. MBH wants to know, what is the strategy to respond to the increase in crime?
Well, thank you, MBH. But first of all, let me thank everyone on the call for participating in this town hall. As much information as we are providing you, the questions that you provide us really gives us insight on what your concerns are and give us a better ability to respond to them. The first question as it relates to our strategies for responding to increasing crime, one of the things, I'll go back just a bit, one of the things that we begin to do is to rejoin a number of task force with our federal, state, and local partners, and then take a look at our department internally to make sure that we had alignment in certain units and assignments, as well as going into the summer, we have adjusted that plan. That plan will roll out next week, but I can tell you what that requires us to do is to put more resources on the street, cutting back on some of our administrative services and processes so that we can put those officers out on the street and then be more strategic and increase some of our hours in certain areas that we recognize we are seeing spikes in crime. Additionally, one of our biggest targets will be the restaurants that poses as the nightclub posing as restaurants. So we beefed up our license and permits unit, as well as our nuisance property task force. Both of those entities overlap and will be targeting some of the repeat locations that we continue to have problems in. I've had conversations with a number of our state partners who are, as well as our state partners, who are in alignment and on board in doing this, as well as working with the DA's office, who is very strategic about her utilizing her ability to target gangs differently. And so using the RICO specifically to go, is it RICO? Yes, using RICO to go after the gang members of these gangs. So I think that what our strategy would look like going into the summer, just in a nutshell, is putting more resources on the street, utilizing more resources during peak hours, and then a internal alignment with our department.
Next, we got questions for Major Collier. What are the crime statistics for the Westlake MLK area?
All right, thank you for that question. We've seen a drastic decrease in crime in that area. Year to date, we have 3 aggravated assaults, 2 larceny commandos, and 1 burglary that have occurred in that area. Today, another ag assault occurred in that area. From my understanding, there was some chatter on Nextdoor about the ag assault of the shooting that occurred on the 1500 block of MLK today. We responded. The officers did not locate a victim. However, we did talk to some neighbors, and a shot was fired. There was a dispute between a father and a son. We believe that the daughter was probably grazed, but we can't confirm that. And so we didn't have a victim, and we did have one stating that they did shoot. So we're still investigating.
Yolanda and Marcy wants to know, will there be more neighborhood drive-by patrols? How many units patrol each neighborhood and how often? Okay,
so the zone 1 is divided into 14 beats, and an officer is responsible for each beat. It's also divided into 2 sectors, and so there's an umbrella car in each sector. And so when the officer is not answering calls for service, he or she is patrolling your community. In addition, we have other various discretionary units that are patrolling your neighborhood as well, such as our crime suppression unit, our crimes enforcement unit, and various other units throughout the city that they also be patrolling here.
Clarissa wants to know, people are illegally parking on Walnut Street in front of my house. My understanding is that parking is allowed only by permit. I would like to know how to get a sign stating there is no parking except by permit only.
Okay, so the parking permits are only valid during events at the Dome. Also, we understand that if your parking permit is not valid, that the pandemic has not allowed everyone to get their parking permit renewed. However, if someone is illegally parked in Vine City, we will address that. If someone's blocking your driveway or illegally parked, we'll address that.
Catherine wants to know, what advice do you have for the Good Samaritan Health Center to prevent overnight thefts from our urban farm? We put up cameras and they were stolen. We have had nighttime security, but that is very expensive. We have had our garage broken into, our car battery stolen, and farm tools taken.
Okay, so I do recall that incident, that burglary of the garage where the van was also entered and the battery was stolen out of it. We did get some good fingerprints from that incident. However, there wasn't enough detail to identify the suspect. That property there on Nolly Hollow is fairly large. We can't really see it from the road. So if the gates are left open, I will have the officer to patrol inside so that we can see the back and we can see the garden as well and the shed. What I will do is have my crime prevention inspector, Ms. Word. She should be on the call. Are you on the call, Ms. Word? You said your word on there. And so okay. And so what Ms. Word will do is her and her team will come out and perform a safety and security inspection of the property to somewhat, without a better word, to harden the target. And so I will have her meet with you all so that we can get that done.
Lena states, I reported a neighbor on my street working on cars. Also, there were cars with expired tags that had been sitting there for quite some time. I called 911, the policeman came out, nothing happened. Unlike before, when I called, the policeman came out and the cars were removed immediately. My neighbor brought this situation to me. We both called and the cars are still there as of May 13th.
I'm sorry you had a negative experience with one of our officers. At any time that you feel that you haven't gotten the service that you deserve, please request to speak to an on-duty supervisor and we'll speak to you. We will address this. We have the location. We don't have the exact location. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sorry that happened, and we certainly take quality of life issues. We address all of our quality of life issues if they are important.
We could actually ask that if that person's on the call and they could give us specific location. We don't have to hold anything up, but we can figure that out.
The next set of questions are for Deputy Chief O'Connor. Does APD have any plans on implementing shot spotter technology in areas where high reports of gunfire are reported? Example, call your heights, and this is from Kamara.
Good evening, Kamara. Thank you for the question and joining us this evening. This is Darren Sherman with our Strategy and Special Projects Division. The Atlanta Police Department does use technology as a strong component of any of our crime fighting strategies. We currently have fixed and mobile cameras feeding into our Video Integration Center, our license plate readers, and our ballistics lab, just to name a few. Shot spotter is being considered. We are exploring it as a possible pilot this year. We're presently in the phase of determining gunfire patterns in the city to see what would be conducive for that pilot. And if we do proceed that, we will certainly have a community engagement initiative to make everyone aware of our efforts.
And I'm sorry, so the questions are going to be answered by Deputy Chief Sherman. So the next question, why aren't cameras being monitored that are placed in problem areas and or cross streets to combat ongoing criminal activities like in Ashview Heights?
So this is Deputy Chief O'Connor. The camera systems work like this. We have about 1,500 cameras that we own that we actively monitor on a regular basis. But by actively monitor, that doesn't mean that we're looking at any one particular camera at any moment in time. So if we receive a call in the Ashview Heights area of a high priority type crime, someplace west of JLO, and there's a camera in the immediate vicinity, then the people in the Video Integration Center would then bring that camera up and start looking at it and see what information they could find there. We would check for nearby LPR systems, and we would provide all of that information as close to real time as we could to the field. Also know that all the camera footage is recorded and stored for a period of time. And so if investigators realize that they need camera footage from that area, they can contact the Video Integration Center and have that sent to them. And then we use the information that way. So those are the two primary ways that we monitor and use the cameras.
So before we move forward, everyone, this is Shaka Spikes, Director of Public Affairs. We want to explain how we're going to ask the questions. The first person you heard was Deputy Chief Darren Shearbaum. He's over our Strategies and Special Projects Division. That division is responsible for coordinating and facilitating the department's strategic crime fighting initiatives and our technology. The second person you heard from was Deputy Chief Michael O'Connor, who's over our Contingency Operations Division, and it's responsible for researching, developing, planning, and implementing a strategic force for all of our major events in the city of Atlanta. As we move forward, each set of deputy chiefs and or majors that you hear from are responsible for a respective division within the department. We'll explain what that division is to give you context as it relates to each question that is asked. So the next set of questions will come from our Criminal Investigations Division, and I'll toss it back over to SPO, Tashina Brown, and she'll explain what the CID, which is Criminal Investigations Division, what they do, and she'll introduce you to Major DeAndrea Price.
So the CID is the Criminal Investigations Division. They consist of investigative units whose primary responsibility is to investigate and follow up on crimes committed against persons or property in the city of Atlanta. So the next set of questions will be answered by Major Price. David Gregory wants to know, is there any work being done to shut down illegal boarding houses in Ashview Heights?
Good afternoon, Gregory. Boarding houses are governed by the City of Atlanta zoning unit. To provide an example for that, if padlocks are on different doors within that same dwelling, the Atlanta Police Department does not govern this. The zoning unit will diligently work to eliminate those problems on that property itself. Such as multi-dwelling homes that are not zoned for that purpose, you may email codebusters@atlantanga.gov. Again, that's codebusters@atlantanga.gov to address the complaint. Please include the address of the complaint and and as much detail as you can, and just remember it's about the property usage itself. Code enforcement is divided into different sections, and to learn more information on who handles what type of quality of life issue, please visit the City of Atlanta webpage and go to the Office of Code Enforcement Affiliates. You may also contact 311 and your complaint will be directed to the appropriate department. The Atlanta Police Department Code Enforcement Commander is Major Shift Power. Thank you.
The next question is for Major Price and Major Collier. This is from Melody and Mabel. What is the master plan for addressing drug houses, prostitutions, Pros, Johns, Angela Dalton, who was arrested over 80 times and banned from the neighborhood, and abandoned vehicles? How can we report a drug house?
That's a good question, Ms. Blunt. Just call me, like you always do, and we will address them. Or you can email me, kcollier@ga.gov. We will continue to do enforcement in Ashford Heights just about every day. And our plan for the drug and prostitution, mainly the prostitution, is to kind of forward those individuals to our pre-arrest diversion, being there's zone 1 now. I spoke about that in Ashford Heights meeting, also in the PU meeting. So that's what we look to do with our repeat offenders. We understand that we can't arrest our way out of the situation. We've been doing it a lot. We've been executing a lot of search warrants over in Ashford Heights. And so that's our plan moving forward.
To add to that, we always encourage the See Something, Say Something campaign. So please contact 911 or our non-emergency telephone number of 311 or 445460311. Also, you may utilize our Crime Stoppers. Those tips are investigated. The Code Enforcement Unit also follow trends and patterns for quality of life issues and facilitate collaborative details with all of the City of Atlanta code enforcement agencies to address their purview of issues on that property. Thank you.
Sandra wants to know, are landlords being fined for renting to persons selling drugs?
In order to determine if drugs are being sold, it will need to be investigated and confirmed by the police department. Please contact Crime Stoppers or crimestoppers@atlanta.org or 44577-TIPS or 8477. There is a city ordinance of 74-171, which is buildings used to sell or dispose of illegal controlled substances. A public nuisance petition may be filed with the court to also close that location. The Atlanta Police Department Code Enforcement Unit can investigate and start those proceedings.
Every house set that we execute a search warrant on, we report all that information to our asset forfeiture.
Next, you'll hear from Deputy Chief Timothy Peak. He leads the Field Operations Division, also known as FOD. They are the uniform patrol force of the city. Officers patrol the city streets, answer calls for service, and work with the community to solve trending problems. FOD consists of 6 geographic patrol zones and the night commander, who is the ranking supervisor during late night shifts. So the next question is for Chief Peak and Major Collier. What can we do to engage with beat officers and establish a relationship? How can we make our community safer besides calling 911 to report something which can sometimes be ineffective?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Again, Deputy Chief Peak, thank you for that question. And I actually want to also thank you for having the desire to increase engagement with our police officers. And what I would say is that any opportunity that you have outside of the official capacities where you have an opportunity to extend a hand to the police officer to engage in conversation, please do so. And as we look, recognizing that we've been in this pandemic mode, but thankfully things are going in the right direction, we welcome you to, at the earliest opportunity that's safe, to just visit the precinct, walk up and speak to some of the officers while they're there. They welcome your dialogue. We ultimately want to grow our relationships with the community and work hand in hand together. As we look at making our communities safer, one of the things, if you go back to Major Price, we have opportunities for you to call in to Crime Stoppers when you see crimes that are taking place. But another thing that I would like each community to do is to consider and go back and take a look at your neighborhood watch programs. And if they are not actually up and functioning well, we want you to reach back out to our crime prevention inspectors. I believe Inspector Word, again, is still on that call, to go back and establish new block captains or add to those so that you could actually get a better neighborhood watch programs out there so that when you see things that you can work as a community together, but those things that need to be escalated to the police department to utilize the many methods of reaching out to us so that they can be reported and we can come out there and deal with it. There are some other issues that you could probably report that don't require that emergency 911 assistance to utilize 311 to report those other issues as well. But any way that you can reach out to us, we want you to, and we ultimately want to make sure that we take care of those problems as soon as we can.
So in addition to that, we're having coffee with the cop in just about every community. And I'm requiring the beat officer to attend those. And so if you'd like to come out to those, you can meet the beat officer. After the pandemic, when it's over, I'm going to require the beat officer to attend all the community meetings. So if you all come out to those, you can meet your local beat officer and you can also get to know you as well.
The next set of questions will be answered by Major Reginald Mormon. He represents the Community Service Division, CSD, which encompasses units that are directly responsible for coordinating and facilitating community-oriented policing principles, the Atlanta Airport police functions, and special operations. Andrea wants to know, how are we going to address the homeless, mental, inebriated persons that hang out and drip from the gas stations into the neighborhoods, trespassing on private property, sitting on private porches, using outside water spigots of private residences?
Thank you for that question, Andrew. We encourage all citizens to call 111 if anyone, including homeless, mental, people with mental issues or inebriated persons are conducting themselves in the manner described in those in the question above. When 911 is called, we're able to capture that information, properly document these police citizen encounters. We can refer back to this at a later time, and many of our responses and the allocation of our resources are generated by calls for service, 911 calls, as well as community requests and those reports. And when you call, we're able to start the process to generate several resources within the Community Services Division, as well as with our zone and patrol division, such as our homeless outreach personnel that will come out and address these issues. The beat officers aware of these, will be aware of these issues as well. The whole team that we have, the homeless outreach, if we're dealing with those types of issues, they are comprised of officers with caring personalities who are determined to assist these people. No matter how many times they come out, they'll continue to come out and work with these people with the goal of securing permanent housing. So we definitely work hand in hand with the zone. And so that's how we would address that issue.
Hey,
also, in addition, now all our citizens can call 311 and have a pre-arrest diversion team come out and kind of assess the situation. They have resources. We can put our homeless in hotels and various types of counseling for the homeless. So that's another resource besides calling 911, in addition to calling.
The next question is for Major Mormon and Major Collier. Valencia and others wants to know what measures are being taken against speeding in the neighborhoods and school zones. What about the dirt bikes?
Speeding in these neighborhoods and school zones, we'll address those with a multi-layered approach. Within the Community Services Division, we have the Special Enforcement section that we have our motors officers on the motorcycle, our auto crimes enforcement, our high intensity traffic unit, and they will respond to those locations. And again, we ask that you call 911. We will come out, we'll operate speed detection devices. We also have traffic enforcement details that we will utilize in your community. Also, we have our helicopter unit, Phoenix, that will come and monitor in the area, especially when we're dealing with ATV type issues. We'll monitor speeding, and we're able to speak with and work with the zone commanders as well. You brought up the issue with dirt bikes. Dirt bikes and this racing is a problem nationwide. We're also dealing with it at the metro area. We're working with our partners on a national level. Many of our commanders are part of the national network. We go out and we speak. We focus on best practices, what is working. And one of our strategies that we definitely work on is partnerships. We partner with other law enforcement, local law enforcement agencies, Georgia State Patrol, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, City of South Fulton, to combat these issues, as well as bringing some of our personnel, some of our office personnel comes out, and we're working on these issues around the clock. We bring in officers on their off days. We work dedicate overtime as well, because we do acknowledge that this behavior is reckless, it's unlawful, and it is dangerous.
Just in addition to that, I have assigned a couple of officers to conduct enforcement surrounding this issue. It is a challenge for us. We have a policy in place that kind of restrict us, but that policy is in place for our safety and your safety. And so we utilize various methods to apprehend them. One resource is citizens calling us and letting us know where they live, because some live in their communities. And so we're able to apprehend them and arrest them that way. I think we'll see a drastic change once the courts open back up, fully reopened.
All right, at this time, we will now address the questions that we have received via the chat box. In addition to that, if anyone tuning in with us today has any additional questions that they would like to ask of our commanders, you're able to please submit them via the chat or raise your hand and we will get to you.
One person asked about speeding. This particular person is Sandra Bush. What is the plan to address speeding cars on Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard Southwest between Student Nonviolent Boulevard, Old Fair Street, and MLK Junior Drive?
We certainly can conduct some enforcement in that area.
The next question comes from Jill Word, that's Jill Word's email is listed. The next question comes from Dr. Juanita Morton. Cars are continuing to run the stop sign on Collier Drive and Collier Ridge Drive. Also, off-road vehicles, ATVs, and dirt bikes are running in the areas up to 2 a.m. How will we address that?
We can and will conduct some enforcement on Collier Drive. That has come up before. I have tasked officers with addressing that issue. We have written some tickets, and we will continue. Please call when you see that. Give us a call when you see that so that we can address it.
That is it for the questions that were placed in our chat room, in our chat area. If you have, I see one more. Is there a unit that will deal with our problem with sex trafficking, specifically with kids? That's from Noki.
We do have a unit in our special victims unit that will look into any kind of sex trafficking that occurs. If you have that information, please submit that information, even if it's by anonymous, so we can investigate it through our Crime Stoppers, or feel welcome to call me or the Special Victims Unit for more information.
Adams has a question.
Ms. Linda, what is your question?
I don't have a question. Good evening to all of you. I just want to give my condolences to the loss of one of your fine officers, Sergeant Johns.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Are there is anyone else? We have Louis or Luclaire?
Yes, I just need some clarification on the parking issue. I'm looking at your parking website, and it lists Vine City as one of those neighborhoods that requires a parking permit. So it doesn't say anything about only during dome events.
If you look at the code section, it's only during dome events.
Because my issue is all along Walnut Street, the residents that live there, if someone comes along and parks there, then they have nowhere to park. So they got to park around the corner, and they live in the house. So you're saying that's quite all right. It's a first come, first serve situation.
Yes, that's the parking permit is only enforceable during the events at the dome. We can certainly speak with our council person and have some legislation created to address that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Melody Blunt, your question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having this town hall for us. I want to go back to the speeding. We have speeding Lawton Street, and you have speeding around the high school and the elementary school, the Washington High School, Beckwith, and Fair Street for M. Atlas Jones. Can we look into that? I have requested multiple speed studies. I don't know what they have done with that, but I have requested that. But the speeding it's a race track right here at Lawton Street in Southwest and Beckwith Street right there by Washington High School. Can we take a look at that for me? Also with the prostitution, we know it's an ongoing problem. It's been an ongoing problem for Ashview Heights, but what can we do differently that we've done in the years past? You know, you have the Johns riding around. Can we like set a trap? They're coming over here for the prostitutes. There's other things that we can think of that's outside of the box to take care of that. And I need your help with Angela Dalton. So can we figure out how we can get with our new prosecutor and work on that and taking care of Angela Dalton as well too? Thank you.
Yes, we can. The situation at Angela Dalton, I don't know how it fell through the cracks, but it fell through the cracks at the county level. As you know, she was supposed to be banned from Ashview Heights, but I don't think they followed through the court system. I don't think the prosecutor followed through with it. It wasn't enforceable.
No, and so, she didn't get any of the treatment that she was supposed to have. She didn't get anything. Nobody followed up with her. So yeah, she's just out here wilding.
Right. So we will address that the best we can. We're going to try to send it through the PAD program, as I mentioned to you before. And so we're hopeful that those services will change her behavior.
There's one more question from the chat.
All right, Cheryl would like to know, when can the residents be considered for a camera on 103's beat on the corner of Woods Drive and Old No? When is the next fiscal budget for cameras, and can we be considered?
So the camera process for this fiscal year worked like this. This time what we did was every council person contributed. So the council person got with the major collier, and then they came up with the locations that we were going to approve. We'll go back and look and see what locations were approved and so on. And that location may have been. I don't know it off the top of my head, and we'll get the information back to you. If that didn't work, then going into the next fiscal year, you want to have a conversation with Major and Collier about the need at that particular intersection. And if we have the funds, we will try and get a camera up at that location.
All right, Ms. Linda, do you have another question?
It's not a question, but this clarification, like she said about those residential parking permits. I've been in this neighborhood 20 plus years, as most of you all know. And the problem that we had with the parking when the dome was there for the Falcons games, what has happened since in the last 30 days, we have the senior facility that's located at 575 Foundry Street. We only have 30 maybe parking spaces, and the church had allowed the other residents to park over there. However, as of May the 16th, we were not able to utilize the church parking lot. So the residents began to park on Spencer Street, Walnut Street, and Foundry Street. Foundry Street is very narrow. So what we were told was to get the permits to say residential, residential parking only. But if I'm hearing Major Collier say that it's doing the dome even, then the signs we already have out there, it says the dome, but it's not talking about that Dome Atlanta that's up there now. It's talking about the dome that where the Falcon used to play. My suggestion was the signs needs to be changed. There is a city ordinance out there by Councilman Young stating which streets should not have parking on it. And as you all know, back during the NBA, Vine City right in this area was just dreadlock. We could not move. I stayed out there till 4:30 Saturday morning, 3 days in a row. The traffic was horrible. So now we are told to apply for the permit, but Major saying it says only doing dome parking that they would be enforced. Now we need clarity as to, do we need these signs to say we permit, residents, or like you said, they can park wherever they want to, whenever they find a space? We just need clarity.
Ms. Adams, let's do this. Because I can see where I can hear that there's some confusion in how this thing is being perceived. Let us get with the law department and ADOT and follow back up with you immediately, as soon as we possibly can. And ADOT may need to come back out there and do a different study to see what this parking and this traffic flow is looking like. Because I hear your concern, and I can see how that can be very problematic. So we probably just have to reevaluate that and follow back up with you. And we'll do that soon.
Thank you so much, because there's an event this weekend with that Dome Atlanta for Memorial Weekend, and we're going to be tied up again. And the residents, like I say, you got about 25 plus cars already parked on the street of Spencer, Founder, and Walnut. So it's going to be a real big mess again, probably, even though the Dome Atlanta people agreed to have the policemen to patrol, but that's on the patrolling their property, not the city streets.
Okay, we're looking into it, Ms. Adams.
Thank you, sir.
Looks like we have another question from Lou Claire.
This is Clarissa. Yeah, I just have someone mentioned speeding, and that just reminded me that it looks like people are using Walnut now as a cut through from Northside Drive, and they're coming through here flying. What does it take to get a no through traffic sign? Or is that just, I mean, what can we do about that? I see that Sunset got speed bumps to slow people down, but no, this is now become a cut through.
So ADOT would have to do another study on that street. They make that determination on the way traffic flows. If you can get speed breakers, they're in charge of that. And we'll have them look into that one as well.
You said it's who now?
Atlanta Department of Transportation. It's the new department.
Okay then. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Going once, going twice. I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Bryant for closing remarks.
Well, again, I would like to thank you all for really just taking the time and sharing your concerns as it relates to your community with us. As you see, there are things that we just didn't know. Glad that you were able to bring that forward. I assure you that we'll immediately take a look into it and then follow back up with you so that we can all work collaboratively to make your neighborhood much better. Thank you so much for taking this time, and I appreciate you.
Good night.